the first live Polo Show podcast. I'm joined with Kevin McKelligan. Today we're going to get into some good stuff and preview the 49ers season opener. So we're going to have some good preview today. We'll talk a little bit more about the season, so let's get into it.
Gonna throw it, wide open, touchdown, 49ers! And to Draymond. Hurry! Watch Stafford go deep and picked off. Were able to do week 3 in that matchup. Toss to Jones and big middle linebacker Fred Warner made the stop. Into the end zone, caught!
Okay, everybody, welcome into the first ever live Polo Show podcast. Hey, Tanya, hey, Brandon, I see you guys in here. I'm joined by Kevin McKelligan today. Kevin, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell everyone where they can find you on the socials.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. So like Chris said, my name's Kevin. I'm very active on Twitter. You can find my Twitter handle right there at SF9er49. That's where I'm primarily talking about the 49ers. Also, you could I've started writing for Niners Empire at Stadium Rant. So I have, I think, 5 or 6 articles out now. So go ahead and give those a read. And, you can DM me if you like them, if you hate them. I'm trying to get better as a writer since I'm new, but those are the 2 primary platforms that you can find me at.
Yep, for sure. Kevin's writing some good stuff. What's going on, Mav? I hope you're not watching any Giants baseball because you got to give up on that, bro. It's football season. Nobody cares. But yeah, I mean, we're going to cover on this channel the 49ers all season, obviously. I'm going to cover the Warriors also. I'm sure I'll have Kevin on future episodes too. We'll get some other guys on the Twitter community, as we all probably know of. But let's go ahead and just dive right into it. The Niners season is opening. Trey Lance era is starting, and they're starting against the Chicago Bears. Should be a win, but you never know just because any given Sunday, week ones can also be a little bit weird. We saw what happened last night with the Rams and the Bills. So first thing we should go over is keys to the game. What are some keys to victory for the Niners on Sunday, but also what are some areas of concern do you see, Kev?
Well, hey, I mean, that's a great question. So, I mean, I was thinking a little bit about this earlier today, and obviously we know that there could be some inclement weather, right? So I think, I mean, the first key to the game is going to be how our run blocking is. I think that if the weather is poor, I think we're going to see at least 35 to 40 runs. And, the 49ers in the past have had one of the best run blocking offensive lines in the NFL. We have a plethora of backs that can get it done as well. So for me, since the Bears know we're going to run the football, it's hard to be successful at something when a team knows what you're going to do. And you can go back to last year with the NFC Championship game. The Rams, I remember specifically, brought in another defensive lineman, put their hand in the dirt. They had 4 down on the line and 2 on the outside. So right there were 6, and then they had 2 linebackers. So if the Chicago Bears, and I think they run a bear front, so they're going to be running a 4-6. So if they can key on our run and try to find some weaknesses on the newer members of the offensive line, like Burford, like Jake Brendel and Aaron Banks, those guys are going to have to perform interiorly. I think the Niners are going to run the ball a lot this game. So it really just depends on whether, those guys can get pushed because the Bears know it's coming. And another key to victory, I think, is going to be probably third down efficiency. We know that that's one of the strengths of Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, can the 49ers run game put Trey in a position to where he can be efficient? We're not getting into 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 on a consistent basis. But if we're getting on 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, we still have the option to run or pass, which is the strength of Trey Lance's game is, short passing, quick passing, and being able to run with his legs in case protection breaks down in pass protection, or if he decides to keep the ball. So those are a couple keys. And then one big concern I have is, I kind of mentioned it last night on a podcast, is our interior run defense. DJ Jones is one of the most effective first and second down defenders in football. He's no longer with us. He's on the Denver Broncos. So what can Javon Kinlaw do? Because if Javon Kinlaw plays well, if he plays close to the level of DJ Jones, then I think we'll be okay. But if he struggles and he's not getting that push, or he's not making an impact on the game, and he's having to, have Fred Warner and Azeez Al-Shaair and Drake Greenlaw come in and fill those holes. And if those offensive linemen from Chicago are getting into the second level, that's concerning for me, because if it's, again, inclement weather, the score is most likely going to be lower. And so running the football and stopping the run is going to be the most important. So those are kind of two aspects, keys for victory, and then one area where it could be a little concerning.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Tanya really said, "Hey, I know him." That's really what Tanya really just said right there. Yeah, for me, if you know, you know. But for me, keys to the game, like, here's the thing. I think the Niners are going to win. They should win really soundly. I don't think it's going to be – it shouldn't, at least, when you look at the rosters. It shouldn't be a game that's close. But that's what happens with a trap game, right? It's the game where you think there's no way my team loses. And week one, weird. So I just look at the way the Niners started last year. I don't want to have like some sort of slow start. I really want them to just come out soundly, beat this team. I don't even want to rest at any point. Here's my one concern for the Bears is, and it's really just one. I really like, they're not good. I'm sorry. They're just not good. There's one thing that concerns me. It's Justin Fields improvising and scrambling for first downs. That's the only thing that worries me, because if you go back to last year's game, now Josh Norman was out there, Jimmy G was QB, but Debo literally bailed us out of that game. The 83-yard screen, catching that deep pass. But Justin Fields, he had like 175 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. So he didn't throw great, but he ran for over 100 yards on 10 carries, had that insane touchdown where he was like rolling to his right and then all the way to his left and somehow got all the way to the end zone. It's those kind of plays where the Niners, even in 2019, like, they would struggle sometimes against QBs that are mobile like that, like the Kyler Murrays of the world. So that's my only area of concern. And also, like we were mentioning, it could be, rainy. It could be a bad field. I think it's going to be a really physical game. And the Niners should have the edge there with physicality. You look at, I know the offensive line has some questions, but like Trent Williams, and you look at the defensive front, you've got Nick Bosa. I think Kinlaw is still a physical monster. Eric Armstead, the other edge. We have the best linebacking core in the league. My thing is, especially with Jimmy Ward out, you need to make Justin Fields beat you throwing in the pocket, because he's not going to do that. Right, especially with Charvarius Ward now starting at corner, Emmanuel Mosley out there, Samuel Womack. Like, you don't have Mr. Josh Norman out there going. Only value is really forcing fumbles. You're set. So you got to make sure he's just containing. It's easier said than done, but that's the one area where I have concerns. So my keys to the game, and it shouldn't be too concerning once again, but offensive line, it's got to step up. I know that's our biggest question mark probably for most people about this team, because they lost Laken Tomlinson. We lost Alex Mack. Mike McGlinchey's a huge question mark at right tackle because we don't know how healthy he actually is. And obviously we got to protect Trey Lance, especially if it's going to be a nasty field. So I do really want to see that offensive line, of course, in pass protection, but I really want to see them create those lanes in the running game. I want this to be a game where we can just run them out of the building, where Trey doesn't have to do that much. That being said, I do also want to make sure Trey gets going early. I don't want them to like just kind of just run early. I honestly believe they're going to drop a shot on the first play of the game. I would not be surprised. I was just saying on the space earlier. I think it's going to be play action, and he'll have the safety blankets available to him, but I think there's going to be a shot just in case, probably to Brandon Ayuk. But I need to see the offensive line, especially if Kittle doesn't play. There's going to be a hit taken to the run blocking. So I want to see who's going to step up there. And just that defense, just containing Justin Fields. So that's what I have for this game. But like I said, on paper, this should be a really lopsided game. Like I don't see how the Niners, who dominated offenses with elite quarterbacks, should struggle against this Bears team and Justin Fields. I'm sorry. But kind of leading into that. Kind of leading into that. what specific Niners, I know you're mentioning Kinlaw also, but what specific Niners need to step up in order to just win a sound game, in order to just go in and just dominate in Chicago? What Niners are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it a little bit. I think Mike McGlinchey is going to be huge because last year, I was going back and forth with a couple of people on Twitter that really kind of dug into it. Um, and they said that Robert Quinn, who I believe had 17 and 18 and a half sacks last year, was a first team All-Pro, lined up a majority of the time against Trent Williams, who was the best left tackle in football. So clearly that didn't work out for them because we won the game in the end. I would imagine if they were smart, they would switch him over to the right side
Mm-hmm.
On our offensive line, the left side on their defensive side, because when you have a dominant pass rusher, you saw what Von Miller did last night. I mean, the Bills have 5 or 6 guys that can get after the quarterback, but if you remember last year, I mean, the Rams, their defensive front, obviously they have Aaron Donald. They had Aaron Donald, but they also had Von Miller, and you could see it. One All-Pro or Hall of Fame caliber defensive end can really change the game, right? So for me, if Quinn slides over to that left side against McGlinchey, our right tackle, for me, that could be a big cause of concern. Because I remember last year, Trey's first start, McGlinchey misses an assignment. Chandler Jones comes screaming off the edge. And right then and there, I knew this is going to be a long day for him. So McGlinchey needs to step up. He needs to show that, hey, you know what? I'm back. I'm healthy. And also after the game, he's got to be healthy going forward because, frankly, who's going to play right tackle if he goes down? Is Burford going to slide out to right tackle? Are we going to have to sign somebody? I mean, I don't even know who's going to play right tackle. So for me, McGlinchey's a big player that needs to step up on the offensive line. But also, I think these running backs got to step up. We have a lot of running backs. We have 2 rookie running backs, first-time running backs, and we know we're going to run the football. I think Elijah Mitchell is going to be efficient. But what is TDP and what are Jordan Mason going to do? I think I don't imagine that Elijah Mitchell is going to be amassing 25-plus carries in the first week of the season. I think we're going to see a running back by committee, and it's going to be, who's going to take the charge of being running back 2. I think Jeff Wilson Jr. is running back 2 on the depth chart. Who's going to step up and really take that RB2 role? Because I think that job is still up for grabs. We know Jeff Wilson is good out of the backfield catching the ball. We know he's a tough runner. But who else can fill that role? I imagine Jordan Mason, let's say we're up late, maybe 2 scores. He could be a guy they bring in and to get a couple first downs to put the game away. So I'm really looking for McGlinchey and the running back, just not one player, but kind of as a whole. Are they going to step up and really be able to carry the load this week? Because I don't think we're going to be throwing the ball a lot.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, multiple things in the running game. So McGlinchey is one of mine just because, and I wrote about this earlier about how he's like the right tackle position is my biggest question mark probably on the entire roster, because if he does go down, I don't know who steps in, especially when Brunskill's out with a hamstring. So I really want to see McGlinchey play well because regardless, because we're talking about will he be out there throughout the season, but even when he is out there coming off that injury, there's no guarantee that he's going to be anywhere close to effective as he was before the injury. So I want to see how he fares out, especially if they do decide to put like Robert Quinn on him. If he steps up, especially in pass protection, then I'll feel a lot better. But I do want to see how that goes. I'm going to be watching Burford a lot. I'm really going to be watching Burford because I know that it's really early. We had a small sample size in preseason and camp, but I'm still really high on him. I feel like he's someone who has the ability to be a Pro Bowler in a few years. It just speaks volumes. I know some might say, well, maybe this is because the offensive line is not very deep, but for a rookie to come in to a Kyle Shanahan offense and pretty much from the second OTAs began to all the way now heading into week 1, he was never challenged for that starting right guard position. I think that speaks volumes for Shanahan to be trusting a rookie to do something like that, and especially since he played tackle in college. So I'm really going to be paying a lot of attention to him. I found myself paying a lot of attention to him in the preseason because of all the hype that was coming out of camp and how great he was playing and how he was winning his reps. So I'm not someone who, I'm not going to sit up here and lie. Like when I watch offensive linemen, I'm not like a professional like offensive lineman scout or a former scout that was on the Jets or something. But I do want to like pay attention to see like how is he winning these reps? Is he bullying guys? Is he pancaking guys? So he's someone I'm gonna be really watching. But on defense, I really want to see Hufanga. Like
Ooh,
he's
yeah.
now the starter. He's another guy who got a lot of hype out of camp. I know Roscoe is going to be hyping him up all season. By the way, shout out to Roscoe for the intro video and the overlay. But all throughout camp, what we heard, and D'Amico Ryans was talking about it too, is he stepped up and took a leadership role. How he's, telling guys what to do. He's the first guy on the field at camp pretty much every single practice. And with Jimmy Ward being out, I'd really like to see Hufanga really show us that leadership back there in the secondary, especially because when Jimmy Ward's out, that's a top 100 player in your secondary that's gone. So that's obviously going to be a big deal. I know Odom's back there. You can miss me with that. I know the dude is a special teams player. He's not someone who's supposed to be playing a stretch of games at safety. Hufanga is a guy that they said, you know what, we can let Tart, who's experienced in the system, walk, and we're going to let this guy play. I want to see if he has a good game, if he has a few big hits, if he's good in coverage. That's probably his biggest question mark. Can he be good in coverage? So I just want to see where he is. If he's like one of those guys that's all over the field. If Hufanga's looking good out there, I'm going to feel really good going in the next few weeks.
I think a key for Hufanga is, he's not the fastest guy, but I mean, I feel like he's a really smart football player. And, D'Amico Ryans, so I wrote about him in one of my articles. D'Amico Ryans has said that he's gotten smarter and smarter as a player, and he's worked on his positioning, because I feel like as a football player, you have to know your limitations and you have to know your strengths. He knows he's not the fastest guy, so he knows I got to put myself in the best position, whether I'm playing zone, if I'm playing in the box and I'm playing man-to-man against a tight end, or I've got the running back out of the backfield. For him, if he can position himself correctly on a consistent basis and show that I'm doing my job consistently, I feel like that's all he has to do. One thing that I also think that, can benefit this defense as well is, Jimmy Ward is kind of the thumper back there, right? He's kind of the guy that is not afraid of putting his shoulder and trying to drive somebody back. I think Hufanga's got to step up to that role and play. Because in my opinion, you got to have somebody back there that's a safety that can intimidate an offense. To an extreme, Ronnie Lott, I talk about this with my dad all the time. Ronnie Lott used to put fear in the eyes of running backs and wide receivers and tight ends. And if Hufanga can make some big hits this year, I mean, if you have somebody that doesn't want to go over the middle and you're going to force them to play outside, then you have two of the best cover corners in the league. There's not a whole lot you can do as an offense. So I would love for Hufanga to see, and we saw it against the Packers. He laid out a really nice hit. So for me, positioning, and if he can become an enforcer, and maybe somebody or where teams say, hey, you know what, like we got to avoid going over the middle because Hufanga is going to be looking to lay the wood. Those two keys for me for Hufanga, if he can do that, I think he could become a mainstay player and perhaps even a long-term player like a Jimmy Ward, who's been here for this is his 9th or 10th season. So,
yeah. And another player to highlight too that I actually just thought of, because I was mentioning the offensive line earlier.
Yeah.
This is like the first extended few weeks of action we're going to see from Jake Brendel as its starting NFL center. So that's another guy I'd like to see. Now, the Bears don't have the most intimidating defense, but, we only rarely saw him in preseason. And beating out Daniel Brunskill for his starting center job is not really saying a lot, especially when he got hurt in the preseason. But that's going to be another interesting thing is that was the biggest surprise, I think, for a lot of people, because Alex Mack, we were waiting to see, is he going to retire? Is he going to play? And they didn't really make any moves to go get another established center, and they just feel confident with Jake Brendel. And, the Niners are typically really confident with their in-house players. So touching the ball, he's interacting with Trey Lance on every single play. So obviously it's really important. I want to see how he does too. Really, I'm looking at that pretty much that entire O-line. I don't really need to worry about Trent Williams, but that's something else to monitor, because I know a lot of people are going to be sitting here saying, if our center position is looking horrible, 6 weeks through the season and Trey's just dealing with a lot of pressure, I think a lot of people might be saying we might need to trade for a starting center somewhere. So
I agree. Or anybody on that line. I mean, I know they gotta see what they have in Banks. Burford they just drafted. But I mean, if McGlinchey can't go, I mean, yeah, you're right. We could be potentially looking at trading for a center or right tackle, and that's not a good situation to be in, especially when you're trying to win a Super Bowl. I'm glad that you mentioned Jake Brendel, because I think he's had one of the best overall grades for an offensive lineman in the preseason, in the games, in the times that he did play. So I've been pleasantly surprised with him. And honestly, I expect him to perform. I feel like um, he's been in the system now, what, 2 or 3 years? And again, he's taken a lot of reps with Trey. He was taking second team reps last year with Trey, so they've got a good chemistry. I think that's somewhat important. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think Brendel. I'm less worried about the center position than I was 2 months ago. If that tells anything about Jake Brendel, I think a lot of us might be pleasantly surprised on how well he plays. I really think our two question marks the most are going to be left guard, because we didn't see Banks play last year, and McGlinchey, who is inconsistent.
Yeah, and with the center spot, I know they got Blake Hance also, and he's someone who's going to be a utility offensive lineman. So, yeah, I mean, this is really going to be the real test, though, right? Because now we're going to see all those guys go up against starters, whereas sometimes they were going up against second, third stringers.
Right.
So this is going to be the start of the real test. So something to really monitor. Sup, Beto? Thanks for joining in. And yes, I'm still holding the mic. I'm working on it, man. I'm working on it. Okay, I just had to get started. But I appreciate all you just blowing up the chat and everyone watching, tuning in right now to the first live Polo Show podcast. Now this one we kind of touched on this a little bit throughout our conversation, but who do you expect from really either team, the Bears or the Niners? Who do you expect to be the ones that have the big game on Sunday?
Great question. So, can I pick one player from the offense and one player from the defense?
Go for it.
Okay. So for the offense, again, I was on a podcast yesterday. I think Ray McLeod is going to have a pretty big game, just because he's not going to have like their number one corner on him, and I think he might take some carries out of the backfield to kind of spell Debo. I don't want Debo to be taking running back carries early and often this season. I think if they're in a position to make the playoffs, or maybe if there's a key third down late in the game where they got to put the game away on a 3rd and 1, maybe they put him back there. But aside from McLeod and Debo, I think Brandon Ayuk's going to have a big game. I think they're going to have their top corner on him. Let's see who that is. So their top corner is Jalen Johnson. He's their CB1. They drafted Kyler Gordon out of Washington this year. I don't think he's going to be on Ayuk a lot. It depends on, if Kyle Shanahan sees a matchup that he wants to exploit. I could potentially see that. But, I don't think it really matters who's going to be guarding Brandon Ayuk this game. I think he's going to have a monster game. I think he could have, if it's good weather, I think we'll be passing the ball a little bit more. But I could see him having over 125 to 150 yards in this game. Really kind of show out and say, hey, you know what? I'm wide receiver. Debo's wide receiver 1, but I'm also another wide receiver 1. He's been the best player in camp that we've seen from what we've seen on Twitter. All of our guys posting stuff on Twitter. And we've had discussions about Brandon Ayuk being the best player in camp on the offensive side of the ball. So I think he could have a tremendous game. And I'm excited to see how Kyle uses him with Trey Lance, because it's going to be different than it was with Jimmy Garoppolo. Ayuk basically didn't really see that many targets. He got like 4 or 5 targets a game. I think this year we could see him get at least 8 to 9 targets a game, maybe even 10. I think he's going to get open a lot. I think the scheme is going to be, they're going to be trying to key in more on Debo. And now we actually have a quarterback that can throw outside the numbers and deep. So I think Ayuk on the offensive side is going to have a massive game. And then, we'll probably take the same player, but Nick Bosa. I think Nick Bosa could potentially have a monster game, like 3 to 4 sacks, depending on, if we get the Bears down, big in the second, third quarter, they're going to try to be coming back. They're going to have to pass a lot. I think Bosa could rack up 3, maybe 2.5, 3, maybe even 4 sacks this game. We saw Alden Smith go over 5.5 one game against Pittsburgh. And we've heard all of, the defensive players. We've heard D'Amico Ryan say he's in the best shape of his life. He's dogging Trent Williams on reps, basically being unblockable. So I know the Bears offensive line is pretty bad. So wherever they line him up, he's going to be able to eat. So I could see him ending the game anywhere from like 2.5 to 4 sacks. And if he doesn't do it, it's got to be because they're double, triple teaming him, chipping him at the line, and somebody else is going to eat. Maybe Nobu Khan, Drake Jackson, maybe even Kinlaw has 1 or 2 sacks. But for me, Nick Bosa is the big key on defense.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna get some things in the chat because I saw what Trell said. Not, I agree with Trell on the defense. So I think Fred. I just feel like this is gonna be an all pro Fred game. I think he's gonna step up. I think he's gonna be all over
Yeah.
the place. I think he's gonna have some tackles where we kind of like makes us want to stand up a little bit, like where he gets into the backfield, just nail somebody, or if he's like chasing
He
down
had a
Justin Fields.
he had a tackle last year on AJ Brown that I yelled at my
Yeah,
TV because it
I
was
remember that.
just that was awesome. Yeah.
I think we're gonna get a couple of those from Fred. I
Mhm.
think Bosa's the other one on defense too, because the offensive line. I don't even think Justin Fields really trusts that offensive line. So I think he's gonna be seeing ghosts all day long. I think Bosa, coming off a year where he's snubbed of all pro, you don't want to be the quarterback going up against him. I think he's gonna take advantage.
Yeah.
And Mark said it earlier, they've got a 5th-round rookie at left tackle who's probably gonna be going up
Yeah.
against Nick Bosa. So I think he's gonna feast off that. And for offense, I'm going to go the opposite of you. I'm going to say it's Debo. And it might sound
Okay.
like a simple answer, but the reason I'm going to say Debo is because it might be a bad weather game, right? And I think that in those bad weather games, physicality plays a huge part. Debo's one of the most
Definitely.
physical wide receivers in the league, just the way that he runs the ball. I think that if it is raining, they're not going to maybe utilize that whole vertical offense as much as we might see in other
Right.
weeks. So what did Debo do with Jimmy last year, catching the short to intermediate passes, or even like the screen pass in Chicago last year that he took 83 yards? I think that Kyle's going to find ways to just get Debo the ball in really safe situations, make it
Yeah.
really easy for Trey, and let Debo do the rest. And I think that he's going to have those opportunities where he gets a lot of yak yards, and whether we use him at running back quite a bit also, however much they do, I think he's going to have like 130 to 150 combined yards. I think this just feels like a Debo type game where they need that physicality. I think the thing is this year, though, with Trey Lance at quarterback, what people need to realize is that when you have someone now who can, like, and we don't actually know if he's a better passer than Jimmy. And the reason we say that is because we just haven't really seen him start for a year. So technically we don't know, but what we do know, even if he's bad, what we do know is he can spread the ball everywhere. Jimmy
Mhm.
can't do that. So that's why like the floor is so low for Trey. He just needs to come in and just be able to do the things that Jimmy did do okay at, and everything else will just come over time. So being able to throw the ball outside, being able to throw the ball, deep down the field with a vertical passing game, being able to be mobile, defenses can't just load up the box. And
Mhm.
I think what that's going to do is, because people like to say when the whole Debo situation was going on, the debate was, well, how much do you pay him? Because people try to make the case that he doesn't have a huge route tree. Well, I think that when Jimmy was QB, Kyle Shanahan couldn't fully utilize Debo in his whole route tree. I think that you had
Oh
to use
yeah.
Ayuk to go down the field to open up the underneath for Debo because Jimmy wasn't good at throwing the ball down the field. But now with Ayuk and Debo with Trey, I think you can use them wherever you want. I think Kyle's going to have a hell of a season being able to scheme them in so many different ways. I think now we're actually going to be able to see Debo's full potential as a wide receiver, being able to be utilized every single possible way. And I think he's going to have
Mhm.
another big year. Some people think he might fall off a little bit. I see some people taking the under for Debo when it comes to like under 1,000 yards receiving. I'm not buying into that. Last year, before he started taking handoffs, like the dude was on par with Cooper Kupp when it came to receiving yards. He was up there with the league leaders. This guy's going to be able
Yeah.
to find a way. If he could do it with Jimmy, he's going to be able to do it with Trey. And I think this has a Debo game written all over it coming off that payday. The real question is, how much chemistry does he have with Trey? Because obviously Ayuk has that chemistry. They didn't play a
Mhm.
lot together because they didn't work out together all that much in off season. He was holding out of camp at the very beginning. So that's going to be an interesting part. But like I said, if he can do it with Jimmy, why can't he do it with Trey?
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely. I want to touch on a couple things. I mean, we have a pretty good question here. Niner Sickness Podcast asked Javon Kinlaw over under 2 sacks. And I think it's possible. Like you mentioned, Fields is good at rolling out of the pocket. So are the defensive ends going to be playing contained where they're not going all out trying to get to the quarterback? Or I'm sorry, are they going to play contained where not go all out to the quarterback, or are they going to try to rush Justin Fields and collapse the pocket like you were saying earlier and make him play from the pocket? I think Fields is able to get outside the pocket easier. He probably wants to do that more than step up.
Mm.
So if the Niners want to play contain and make him step up in the pocket, then yes, I think Kinlaw could potentially have a 2-sack game. But if not, if they're going to try to collapse the pocket and just make it a nightmare for Justin Fields, then I think Bosa is going to come out on top with more sacks. But I mean, that's a great question because I think Kinlaw is a huge factor this year because if you remember last year, DJ Jones, not only was he good at stopping the run, he didn't have a whole lot of numbers sacking the quarterback, but he created a lot of pressures for guys like Eric Armstead to get a one-on-one inside. So I mean, Kinlaw is more important to the defense than I think people think. And if he does not play well, then they're going to struggle stopping the run. If you can't stop the run, offenses can't be predictable. And potentially the passing game and all the secondary that we've been hyping up isn't going to do as well. So I think Kinlaw is a huge, huge important piece of the defense.
I can't help it. I have to use a Warriors analogy. Javon Kinlaw to me is the James Wiseman of the 49ers. Like he's the first round pick who has a lot of potential and he's a physical beast, but he's had some injuries and he hasn't really been able to show what he can do. I think this is the year because he got that. So what it was is there was just a problem in his knee, but they fixed it. So now he's all good to go. It's not lingering. I think this year is the year people who are still, missing DeForest Buckner. I think this is the year they forget that. I think Kinlaw's going to have a huge year. He could have a big game. I mean, this Bears offensive line's not good. And also just alone with Bosa, with how much he was double teamed last year and the fact that Eric Armstead is an established player as well, there's no reason, Javon Kinlaw can't find a way to just stumble on 2 sacks. I think it's very possible. So I'm still going to take under, but I think that's mostly because I just think Bosa is going to have one hell of a game. I think he's going to be the one wreaking havoc. But Kinlaw, I have on the season projected to get 8 sacks.
Okay,
I think he's going to have a pretty good year.
I mean, for Kinlaw, I mean, for a 3 technique, you have to be able to demand double teams in the passing game, and when you do get, a double team in the running game, and when you do get a one-on-one opportunity in the passing game, you gotta capitalize on that because we know they're going to try to double Bosa. If you double Bosa, that creates one-to-one matchups across the board on the interior. So the 49ers can do a lot of different things, but Kinlaw is going to be very important to the defense.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And Beto also thinks that Ray is going to have a good game. It does. I do kind of get the feeling Ray is going to be pretty involved in this game. I don't know what it is, but I do kind of have that feeling.
Well,
also.
I had a question for you. So you mentioned Debo running the ball.
Yeah.
I would try to actually spell him for most of the season running the football because we are carrying 4 running backs. We do have McLeod. Now, I personally, we just signed Debo for a ton of money. We gave him a ton of guaranteed money.
Yeah.
Would you rather play him throughout the game and try to get away with it, or would you rather just have him assume the wide back role full time? Because I feel like if he does that and he's taking too many carries, he could potentially get injured, and that is a major part of our offense that goes away. So what role do you see Debo having?
Well, I think that's going to lead into the next into what we're about to talk about, but I guess it just depends how Trey looks, right? Like what is Trey good at? Where is he struggling throughout his first year as a starter? Because if Trey is able to move the offense at an extremely, good rate, spreading the ball all over the field, and Debo's getting involved all over the field, maybe they don't need to use him as a wide back as much, and they can just save it. I want to save it mostly for the situational moments where, like, we have a 2nd and goal or something like that, and Shanahan has something up his sleeve. Maybe they want to run that triple option that they have. And obviously, and I want to see that increase in the playoffs because it's win or go home. But in the regular season, throughout the course of a 17-game season, I would like to kind of try to hold off on it. Shanahan should be able to scheme up an elite running game without even needing to put Deebo Samuel back there. Last year, the running back room was just completely banged up. And that's why we kind of saw, like, once we got to the Cardinals game, he started going to it and it was effective. So it just kind of stuck. But Elijah Mitchell was used so much compared to the other running backs. So I think that we won't have to see that this year. And Beto brought it up too, like with the addition of Jordan Mason. I do think that they're going to use Debo less. We also know Ray McLeod might be used in some similar ways. He's not Debo, but there's some probably like reverses or jet sweeps that they'll probably use him for also.
I'm pretty sure McLeod played running back at Clemson. I don't think he was primarily a wide receiver. I think that's something at Pittsburgh. I think at Clemson he was a kick returner and a running back. I don't
Mhm.
think he was ever really used as a wide receiver a lot at Clemson. I may be wrong, but I remember watching Clemson and seeing him as a running back primarily. So
Yeah, he's a pretty dynamic guy. The only real like thing with him was he's got some fumble issues. That's
mhm.
pretty much the one thing that I do know about. But I mean, I kind of just touched on it. So what should we expect from Trey's debut as a week one starter for the Niners? It's going to his first game. There's a lot of crazy narratives going on about this
Mhm.
guy. I mean, we have people live tweeting every time he throws a pass at practice, even if it's not even in a scrimmage. They're just like recording it and like giving reports on how he throws a wide open out route with no defense. And I'm really tired of it. But what should we expect from Trey, or what do you expect from Trey this Sunday?
I mean, I think we'll probably say close to the same thing, but I expect the kid to ball out. I mean, to me, I think this is his chance. I mean, we just take a look at his career, right? I mean, every position that he's been in, he's been successful.
Hmm.
There hasn't been anything that's told me where he's not going to be not successful, if that makes sense. So to me, I think he's going to rise to the occasion. I think he's going to take this team. I have a feeling that he's already a big time leader in the locker room. Grant Cohn posted a video this morning saying how players gravitate towards him, and he's that leader that everybody says, even though he doesn't have that C on his chest. I think he's going to go out there and lead the team to a victory. I think he's going to cement himself as at least a top 15 to 18 quarterback. I believe he's already higher than that personally, just based on his skill set, IQ. He's got to prove it on the field. But I think and I was kind of bummed to see that the weather wasn't going to be good, because
Hmm.
if it was a nice day like it was last year, I think he could throw for 300 or run for 50 and have 4 touchdowns. Now, inclement weather, I don't think they're going to throw as much. I could see him throwing 18 to 22 passes. Not to say that he can't throw the football, but that's just going to be the scheme we're going to run. But I think he's going to be efficient, and I expect him to use his legs a little bit. But maybe the touchdowns goes from 4 to 3. But I don't. I see a 3 touchdown game, no turnovers, maybe 200 yards throwing and 50 yards running, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, there's no reason, especially against this defense. That is, I think, the better side of the two between the offense and the defense. Their defense is better, but this is going to be no problem for Trey. I mean, he faced the Cardinals team last year that was much better than this team, and frankly, I think the Texans last year were better than the Bears are now. So I think that he's going to come out and he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, no, in Trey's first game, listen, like people got to know, like he's going to have rookie growing pains, even though
Mm-hmm.
he's not a rookie. But like Kyle said today, he's pretty much a rookie. Um, Going into this game, I think it's going to be a clean game. I'm not going to say he's going to like explode right out the gate. I hope he does, and if he does, I'm going to be
Yeah.
belligerent on Twitter. You don't. I'm just being real with
Oh,
all the
same
stuff I've
here.
had to hear,
Yeah.
but I think that it's going to be something like, and this is also partially because I think Debo is going to be a guy on offense that does explode. I think he's going to have somewhere between like the 250, 270 passing yards, two,
Mm-hmm.
maybe three passing touchdowns. But the thing is, I don't think he's going to turn the ball over. That's one thing
Yeah.
about Trey. He's always been a really, some people say he's too conservative sometimes as a quarterback. That's one people say is a knock on him, but I don't think that's a problem for this Niners offense. Looking at
No,
what happened the last few years, I
not at
think
all.
we wish we had a guy that would throw the ball away sometimes and not take shots over the middle of the field and throw hospital balls. So I think he's going to have a clean game. I think that what we got to see in preseason, people really overreacted to pretty much all of it, but we have to remember we were seeing a vanilla offense in the preseason. We were not
Mm-hmm.
seeing what they're really going to run. Like they were not really using motion like that in the
Mm-hmm.
preseason. Like Kyle Shanahan, we motioned more than any team in the NFL last year. There's going to be a lot of different things that Shanahan has up his sleeve to
Yeah.
use Trey for. Obviously, they're running those triple options, and we don't know what else they might be running. Now we're going to get to see him play behind Trent Williams, because in camp, when he was running for his life, or also in the Texans preseason game when he was running for his life, like people kept saying it was musical chairs on the offensive line. Like one day it was in practice, it would be Trent Williams starting, and then the next day it was like Colton McKivitz or something. One day it would
Mm-hmm.
be McGlinchey, the next day it would be somebody else. One day it's Daniel Brunskill, the next it's Jake Brendel. Like now he's finally gonna have that continuity on the O line, and I think that he may start off a little rocky. It's possible, but I
Mm-hmm.
think as we start to get into the game with second quarter, halftime, third quarter, fourth quarter. I think we're going to start to see him really hit that rhythm, kind of the way the first game against the Texans went, the regular season game last year. We saw him get better as the game went on. I think it's going to be kind of like that. But now it's just going to be able to carry over for weeks on end, and it's just going to be able to grow is how I see it. But I see a clean game this Sunday from Trey. I think that he doesn't need to have a big game. Like I said, I think we should be able to put up 30 points in this game without him even throwing for 300 yards. It's just how I feel about the Bears.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I expect to see from Trey. I want to try to manage my expectations as much as possible, but I do think he's going to be extremely good. I just don't know when. But yeah, that's what I see from Trey this Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I mean, you mentioned earlier that you think the first play is going to be a shot play. And a lot of the time, and I remember talking to my dad about this back when we had Alex Smith and we had that 13-3 season, is, I thought most of the time they were going to pass the ball to set up the run because everybody thought we were going to run the ball with Frank Gore, right? I think that's something that Kyle could potentially do. He did it a little bit last year too with Jimmy's. He would pass early to set up the run, and right. I think that's something, typically you run to set up the pass, but especially because people think we are going to run the ball, why not do something that's unpredictable? So I think that's a really great point, Chris, that you made, because again, if it was better weather, I think we'd pass the ball a lot more. But I definitely agree. Take a shot early, test the secondary. And at least, if let's just say that, let's say Ayuk gets open past the secondary, and let's say Trey misses him. Maybe it's a touchdown, maybe it's a 50, 60-yard game. But if at least Ayuk can get behind him, at least the secondary has to make a mental note and say, you know what, these guys can go deep on us. We got to really be careful about that. Maybe they change their game plan from single high to two high safeties, and now you're able to run the ball more effectively. So I don't know what you think about that, but that's just kind of what I was thinking about earlier today. Is maybe Kyle Shanahan maybe uses the pass this year to set up the run game and be a little bit unpredictable that way. I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible because last year, it was tough to even try because one, Jimmy was an average at best passer, and he's not mobile. So you have no threat of a mobile quarterback. He's kind of a tree in the pocket, and he's not going to throw the ball outside. He's not going to throw the ball down the field. So now, it gives Shanahan a lot more flexibility to do things like that. And with Trey able to throw that deep ball, with him able to get out of the pocket, extend plays, even run some read options, they could do a lot of different things. So I wouldn't be surprised because Shanahan is one of the best, if not the best in the league at just scheming his guys open. And it's going to be a lot easier when Kittle's out there. But talking full strength like Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo, now you have a mobile quarterback. You can run those RPOs. You can get him in some bootlegs. You can do a lot more with him. I think they absolutely could do that. They could definitely get some easy passes schemed up to like Brandon Ayuk, maybe even Kyle Juszczyk. You mentioned that earlier in the space. I'm pretty sure he's pretty effective in the passing game also. These little, even if they're just like short little chunk plays, those are things that could help just spread out a defense to the point where it might take a little bit of pressure off the offensive line in the running game to open up those lanes, because it's just going to make the Niners a little less predictable. Whereas you look at the NFC Championship game, the Rams knew it. They're going to run the ball. Load up the box. Can't do that this year. So I think that's totally valid. They could definitely do that. And going into the game, give me bold predictions.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, kind of talked a little bit about it with Brandon Ayuk. I'll change it up. Okay, I'm going to stay on the offense. I'm going to stay in the running back room. I think the running backs have a total of 175 plus yards rushing. I think, that may not seem like, wow, we have 4 running backs, we're going to run the ball 35, 40 times. But when you run the ball that much, it's hard to accumulate 4.5, 5 yards of carry. So if we amass more than 175 rushing yards, I agree. I think it's going to be a blowout win. If they are able to keep our run between 85 to 120, I think the game will be a lot harder to win. But I'll say Elijah Mitchell. No, you know what? I'm going to switch up. I'll say Jordan Mason has 60 yards rushing in the fourth quarter. It's going to be my bold prediction on offense. I think we're going to put the game away early. I think we're going to have a big lead early, and I think Mason comes in the fourth quarter and just runs all over the defense to put the game away, and we walk out of there with the win. So I'll take Jordan Mason, 60 yards rushing in the fourth quarter, only on offense. And then defense, I'll say Nick Bosa has 3 sacks. That'll be a bold prediction.
Yeah, I'll be beating them down in the fourth quarter, and then Jimmy G, the hometown kid's gonna go in and kneel it down. Just kidding. Hell no.
No, they should send in Brock Purdy.
To quote Trey Lance,
that
guy's a bozo, so we're not going to put him in there. But I don't know what your final score prediction is, but for me, I have this as a dominant win. And I know it's talking about trap game at the beginning, but no, I have a 31-10. That's my score prediction. I think they're going to win by at least 3 scores. And one reason behind that is, like I said, I don't think it's going to be like a huge, like, explosive game from Trey. I think it's going to be a nice, clean game, a good game. But I mentioned Debo, how he's going to get like between 130, 150 total yards. I mentioned how I think Bosa, I really think the whole defense is going to get like 5 sacks total. And I just know that I feel like Bosa is going to have at least 2 of them. But I also think this is one area of the defense, right, that people wanted improved was creating turnovers. I think that with Charvarius Ward, I think with Samuel Womack, the way he looked in preseason and camp, I think with how solid Emmanuel Mosley was, like, this is a defense that was dominating and finished at a pretty high ranking last year with Josh Norman starting a lot of games. Dre Kirkpatrick was starting games and struggling. Yep. So as long as we're healthy, and I know Jimmy Ward's out, but as long as we're relatively healthy on defense, I think we're going to see more of those created turnovers. And I think we're going to have 3 of them on Sunday. I don't know what combination, but I think Justin Fields is going to have a really tough time throwing the ball. Because even last year when he played us, he was going up against a worse secondary. So now with the pass rush being just as good, if not better, with the linebacking core, Dre Greenlaw should be out there. He only played 3 games last year with Azeez Al-Shaair now. I think that he's going to force some. He might not see a guy, or he's just going to be under so much pressure. He might throw a couple up there that are up for grabs. So I think we're going to create 3 turnovers. And I think that's really what's going to take the Bears out of the game. And we're just going to capitalize enough, put up 31. I have it 31-10. So that's my bold prediction for the game. But also really quickly, just want to say, appreciate you all for chiming in with your takes for the game. What I want to get into next is, we'll wrap it up here. Predictions for the season. What do you expect for the Niners this year, whether it's record or how far they get or certain players having like all pro seasons? What do you expect from the 2022 Niners?
I mean, I think I've been pretty adamant on Spaces. I mean, I'll be honest. I'll just be blunt. I don't think there's any reason why the Niners can't win the Super Bowl this year, and I don't think that should be like outlandish. I don't think that should be like a shit, Kevin. Like, what are you talking about? I think we upgraded our quarterback. I'm just going to say that we upgraded our quarterback. We added more weapons to our wide receiver, running back room. The only part of our team that we regress is really the offensive line. Our defensive line is deeper. Our linebacking core is finally healthy, and we have better playmakers in the secondary and more sticky coverage guys than we did last year. Last year we should have won the Super Bowl. I mean, we should have won. There's no reason why we shouldn't. And the Rams coming out and looking like they did last night, the Niners should be kicking themselves. And I mentioned that yesterday. I mentioned it today on Spaces. The Niners really missed an opportunity, and I really don't think that it should be outlandish to say that the Niners should win the Super Bowl this year and head into 2023 as the Super Bowl champions. I think if you're a 49ers fan and you love this team like myself, you should be able to see that this team, that there's a path for them to go all the way. And there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do it. The NFC is open this year. There's no real teams really, except maybe Green Bay, that I'm like, okay, maybe we should avoid them in the playoffs. We dominate them in the playoffs. So there's that. I mean, maybe Tampa Bay. But other than that, I really don't see that big of a challenge. So I'm going to say we win the division at I said 13-4 earlier. I think Jimmy Ward might not. We may lose a game early that he won't be there for. So I'll say 12-5, and I think we're Super Bowl champions. And I think that there's a potential also path to sweep the NFC West. The Rams don't look good. The Cardinals don't know what's going on over there, and the Seahawks are one of the 2 worst teams in football. So I'll say my 3 bold predictions for the season: 12-5 division champions, sweep the NFC West, Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
And to put the icing on the cake, Trey Lance Super Bowl MVP over Josh Allen.
That's my thing too. So Tanya hit it on those too. Like I think 12-5 is super possible because listen, we swept the Rams last year already, and they look worse now. Obviously, they're the Rams. They're gonna pull off some trade that makes us think like, what the hell? Like, why couldn't we do something like that? It's gonna be something like that. But at the end of the day, we still swept them in the regular season last year. The O-line looks terrible. They lost multiple starters. You're not gonna find a replacement for Von Miller. You're just not. So 12-5 is possible. I do think we sweep the Rams and the Seahawks. Cardinals, we'll have to see. Unluckily for us, we have to play the Cardinals when D-Hop is back. But even then, unless we have another weird game to Colt McCoy, I think it might look a little bit different. Because we won 10 games last year, right? 2 losses were to the Seahawks. That won't happen this year. No. And then another 2 losses were to the Cardinals, and one of them was that Colt McCoy game I just mentioned. That's just a really weird 4 losses to have, and a lot of it was due to Jimmy G, whether it was Jimmy G being out for the first Cardinals game and just not being available, but probably would have lost that anyways because Kittle was gone too, and their defense played pretty good. But also just not being able to get it done against Seattle, really both times when he was in the game. So I think, like you said, we did upgrade the QB position, and the division got worse. And what I was saying last week, it changes now because of what I saw last night. I thought that the top 3 teams in the NFC were in no particular order, the Niners, the Bucks, and the Rams. Is what I thought. But after seeing last night, I don't think I can put the Rams up there. Hold on, let me get Kevin back in here. I don't think I can put the Rams back at the top over there. So now I'm really sitting here thinking like there's probably going to be a team that's a sleeper. Like, I don't know if the Eagles really pull through and live up to the hype, or if the Saints somehow put together a big season. But I don't really see that as being a threat to the Niners after seeing what they did to elite offenses. Like Dallas was a pretty potent offense, and then also
they're the number 1 offense in the NFL last year.
Exactly, and people could say their schedule is easy, but at the end of the day, number 1 offense, and then the next week, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams were practically shut down. And you're not going to do that every time, but the fact that that defense could do that, and I think this defense improved, I think that when you get to the playoffs, Packers don't have Devontae anymore. The Rams look worse. Tampa Bay's offensive line's completely banged up, so they've got some question marks over there. I don't really see a team that's really standing out saying like, yeah, they should for sure beat the Niners. I think it's wide open. I think the division's up for grabs. And also, like Tanya said, like guys like Brandon Ayuk are going to have a big year. When you upgrade the quarterback, a lot of different things can be made up for any shortcomings you have. And I think Trey, I'm not saying he's going to be Mahomes or anything like that, but I think he's going to be an upgrade. And we all know, watching the last playoff game last year, really the playoffs in general, or the whole season, an upgrade from Jimmy G, we would have won a Super Bowl. Like, dude had a passer rating of 4.2 in the 4th quarter against the Rams in the NFC title game. That's not asking a lot of Trey to do better than that. Like, that's a very low floor. It's almost like no floor at all, actually, at that point. So I think they get to the Super Bowl. My only thing is I can't confidently say they win yet because of the Bills. I need to see Trey first. And the only reason I need to see Trey first is because, and I was mentioning this in a group chat yesterday, sometimes a season or a lot of games just come down to, can your quarterback make certain throws at certain moments in the game when it's needed most? I believe Trey can, but I need to see him actually do it in certain games this year, which we'll obviously have the chance to see. And if he shows me he's able to do that, I'm going to definitely sit up here and tell you that I think the Niners are winning. But also, like, you look at the Bills last night, the Rams are no scrub team. They're definitely not what they were last year, but they're not a scrub team. Like, they're still probably, I think, going to go like 9-8 based on the way the offensive line looked. I don't think they're going to make changes that make them a Super Bowl contender anymore. We'll see. But I think that seeing what the Bills did, they didn't have Tre'Davious White yesterday. Their number 1 corner was out. They had, was it 3-4 turnovers? 3 turnovers, I believe. And they didn't even allow more than 10 points in the game. They still won by 21 after having a ton of turnovers and not having your number 1 corner. That team's going to be really dangerous. And Josh Allen, in my opinion, is the best quarterback in the NFL. I'm sorry, 9-8. Deal with it. Josh Allen's better by a little bit, but he's better. And like I just said, the quarterback advantage, that was the difference in the NFC title game. Was I think we had a better team than the Rams, but they had a better quarterback in the moment.
We were the best team in the NFL last year. probably I would say I think we're the best overall team in the NFL. Once we got after the Titans game we lost Thursday night, I think when Trey came out and beat the Texans, and then we came back against the Rams, I think the team, it's really funny because they had that 4-game win streak, but I think going into Dallas and just kicking the crap out of Dallas, I saw that and I thought, okay, Cowboys best offense, weak division. But I really believe offense, defense, the entire team, I think the 49ers were the best team in the entire NFL, and they choked. And I don't think there's really anything else you can say. The quarterback was obviously a huge part of it. But I think another big key of the season is how's Kyle Shanahan going to do in-game decision making, because he's not the best at it. And maybe having Anthony Lynn there, maybe who's been a former NFL head coach, who's won a ton of games, who's very respected in the league, can maybe, hey, you know what, Kyle, maybe in this situation, like maybe you call a timeout here, or hey, the game clock's running down, runs over to him, says, hey, call a timeout. Like just little things like that to manage the game better, I think will take Kyle Shanahan from being not I don't want to say middle of the pack head coach. I want to say from a very good head coach to an elite head coach. Obviously, he's one of the best play callers in the NFL, but his decision making, I would say, is okay to maybe slightly poor. So I think bringing in Anthony Lynn is actually going to make him a better coach. So if Kyle can produce the same type of offense but be a better decision maker in game, that's going to help out the team. It's going to help out Trey. So Kyle Shannon's a big factor this year.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That's a really good point you brought up, because let's say Trey is really good this year, and it's like clear, like he's really good, and we get to the playoffs, and it's the fourth quarter, whether we have a lead or not, either way, we know, okay, our offense can't just get too comfortable. We have to start moving the ball still. We have to put up some points. What happens then? Is he going to be able to get Debo the ball the last 12 minutes of the fourth quarter of an NFC title game? Because then we'll know, was it really all Jimmy? And I'm not saying like Jimmy was bad. He was bad, right? But if we now have a really good quarterback and still those things happen, then it's going to start to be like, okay, this truly is a pattern with you, because it's going to go back to the Falcons Super Bowl when he was the play caller. So that is a good point, because I believe Trey will develop. I don't know if it'll happen this year to the point where we can say this dude is like ridiculously good, but assuming he's good enough and he does make those throws in certain moments like I was talking about, plus he has the mobility, the ability to threaten a defense down the field, defenses should be more spread out. So I think that we'll start to see more of, is Kyle really that kind of guy? Is he the type of dude who does kind of choke in fourth quarters with decision making? I think sometimes he tries to outsmart himself on accident. Like he tries to get too creative when it's sometimes you just got to just put the ball in the hands of your best player. Like what Sean McVay did. He did like the two opposite things in the Super Bowl. He had a play where he tried to have Cooper Kupp throw the ball. It's like, dude, why? You have Matt Stafford at quarterback, just let him throw the ball.
The dude had like 1,900 yards receiving.
Exactly. Yeah. And then another play, he had him come take the ball. I think it was like a jet sweep or something, pick up the first down. It was like the polar opposite. So which one is Kyle going to be? Is he going to be kind of outsmarting himself? Is he just going to, like the 3rd and 7 in Green Bay, screw it, I'm not messing around, I'm handing the ball to Debo type. And I like to see that more. You don't need to try to outsmart your opponent. Like sometimes literally line up, put the ball in Debo or Kittle's hands and be like, stop it. Because I think the players are that dominant to the point where you can do that and you can get away in those moments and win some games. So that's going to be really fun to see. So yeah, I like that point you brought up there. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in to the first ever live stream. Can't wait to see the Niners open the season. Kevin, once again, go ahead and tell us where we can find you on the socials.
Yeah, so I'm at SF9er49 on Twitter, or hashtag #5Stan account. Shout out Trey Lance. And then also I'm writing for Niners Empire Stadium Rant. So Chris and I, he's actually one of my editors, so he's editing my articles and helping me post and get my name out there. So you can find our articles there. Again, please shoot me a DM or at me on one of them. All of them are posted if you want to go back and look. I'd love to hear your feedback. So trying to get better as a writer and try to kind of dabble more into the sports industry outside of my full-time job. So yeah, at SF909or49 on Twitter and at Stadium Rant.
Yeah, it's gonna be really fun covering the team this year with you, man. It's funny, like I'm watching games now and I'm like taking notes. I've never had to do that before. But number 5 Stan account, by the way better than Shorty Stan account, because that dude is mid, and I can't imagine making a whole account to name it that. That's just egregious. Anyways, he knows who he is. That's just terrible. But make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Once I hit 100 subs, I'm going to give out a free Nick Bosa jersey with that new saloon font. Those things are clean. So make sure you just click that subscribe button, and I'll keep trying to do this every single week. Hopefully this will be a set time around like 5, 6 on Fridays. So just getting some Niners pregame. And obviously I'm going to cover the Warriors too when that starts up. They start this month. I completely forgot about that. Preseason is coming up. So
oh my goodness. Yeah.
I forgot what it's like when you're the champions and your off season is so short. Like, man, it's like a problem to me, but it's whatever. But thank you all for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one. Go Niners this Sunday, everybody.
See ya.
Wide open, touchdown, 49ers. And to Draymond. Hurry. Watch Stafford go deep, and Rodgers were able to do week 3 in that matchup. Toss to Jones, and big middle linebacker Fred Warner made the stop.